are listening to Black Power 96. This is Diasporic Music on Black Power 96. Norman Richmond and Melinda Francis, Jalali and Melinda, or Jalali and Molly Daki Vexen. And joining us on the line from Atlanta, Georgia is Vern Smith, journalist, author, former Newsweek Atlanta bureau chief, and a lifelong Temptation and Eddie Kendricks fan. And he has visited Eddie Kendricks Park in Birmingham, Alabama, and stood beside the bronze statue of Eddie. And when he was growing up, he always sang the Eddie Kendricks leads while his brother, I think his younger brother, Ray, did the David Ruffin parts. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Norman. Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to pay tribute to one of our favorite, I guess I shouldn't say, probably everybody's, one of the greatest background singers and lead singers, because, Eddie Kendricks had such a beautiful voice. I remember I was reading in the book Otis Williams' book about the Temptations. He said that Eddie was sounding so pretty in the background that sometimes David Ruffin would actually lose his voice. Lose his part and forget about Eddie was singing so sweet. He would lose it and because Eddie was sounding so good.
Yeah, I can believe that. He had a tremendous falsetto and it was sweet is really a good word to describe the Eddie Kendricks sound.
And what kind of impact did he have on? Oh, I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you referenced earlier Otis Williams, and a lot of people probably don't remember or never knew. Eddie, of course, was born in Birmingham, and so one of the things he said was that growing up in Birmingham, one of the things that they knew, he was born in 1939 in Union Springs, Alabama, right outside of Birmingham. His family moved later to Birmingham, and he said one of the things that he and his other friends, including Paul Williams, who was also from Birmingham, right? You know that, Norman.
Yes.
That they decided early on that they were not going to make it in Birmingham, and that as soon as they graduated from high school, they were gonna take off, and they did, landing first in Cincinnati, and formed a group called the Cavaliers, and performed there for a while. Wound up in Detroit in the mid 50s. And met Otis and his group, and Eddie talked about how they would battle it out in these, sort of talent shows and dances in the basement, and they later decided to team up, became the Primes, and then later the Temptations. So, he was really instrumental, along with Otis, in getting the Temptations to become the group that we came to know and love.
Well, you said he went to Cincinnati, but he went to Cleveland. I think you made Cleveland. You made a slip. I know he didn't go to Cincinnati, right?
Right. He went to Cleveland. The group was called the Cavaliers. I remember him saying that. I don't know whether that was before the basketball team in Cleveland became the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was the name of it, that the initial group that they formed before they moved to Detroit. I thought that was just an interesting little bit of history about Eddie.
Do you know anything about Eddie in terms of? Did you ever talk to anybody about Eddie's politics, because Eddie was quite. I remember in Otis' book, he said that at one point Eddie Kendricks wanted to strike. He thought that they were getting ripped off, and he was calling for a Temptations to strike. And Otis said they basically convinced he took the position that if they took that position, that Berry Gordy had so much talent, all they would do was just go get another group and basically forget them. Could you talk about that aspect?
Well, I think, that his politics were probably born out of where he was born, in Birmingham, Alabama. Somewhere I read where he said as kids, they used to drink out of, because this was all during the Jim Crow segregation era with white and colored water fountains and restrooms and everything else. And I remember reading where Eddie said, as a kid, they used to defiantly drink out of the water fountains labeled white, just to see if the water tasted any different. Yeah.
Right.
So I think that kind of upbringing, and the fact that as he said in an earlier interview that they knew that they had to get out of Alabama because they were not going to take basically the kind of barriers that were placed before young people of that time. So I think he probably had his militancy bred in his upbringing there in Alabama.
And another thing I wanted you to comment on the fact is that Paul was the first one to cut his process off. I remember when I saw Paul at the 5-4 ballroom in Los Angeles, which you're familiar with, he had at that particular time what we used to call a sugar bowl. And, the sugar bowl is where you have most of your hair cut off on the sides, and you just have your natural hair on the top. And he had a sugar bowl, and everybody, including Eddie, had processes at that particular time. And then Eddie cut his process off, but he was. Would you say Eddie was a conscious of the Temptations?
Yeah. I would say so. That's my feeling. As I said, he just seemed to be a little more thoughtful and aware about the injustice in America. As I said, and I believe that stemmed from his upbringing, his early years in Birmingham. After he left, of course, Birmingham became like center of Dr. Martin Luther King's movement and a really violent place. It was nicknamed Bombingham. But when you mentioned the processes and the conks, it reminds me of the Getting Ready album, right? Which has one of my favorite Eddie Kendricks led Temptation songs. The way you do the things you do, I think it's on that album. But that album, which has the picture of them in the dressing room getting ready, like particularly the backside of the album, and they all have these like elaborate swirling processes.
Right.
So,
and I don't want to cut you, but and David had what they used to have the JFK. Remember?
Yeah. But they are sort of that album and sort of the subsequent look that the Temptations took on. For me is kind of like a benchmark of how you could literally see the rise of Black consciousness flooding through America, right? Because the Temps were like processed down because that was the thing, and then by the time you get to the Cloud 9 album in '69, they're all wearing afros and it's a very different look and it really echoed what was actually happening in young Black America. You know, the movement from Negro to Black.
Yes, sir. Are you still there?
I am, yes.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with this particular phone. Remember we had a group called the Biko Rodney Malcolm Coalition, and we used to give awards to people who refused to perform in apartheid South Africa, and picket those who went there. And we gave Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin an award. You know, we publicly gave it to them at a club in Toronto called the Copa. And you know, Eddie. Another story about Eddie Kendricks that a lot of people don't know. The Temptations went to perform in South Africa. Eddie was not in the group, so they performed in Jamaica. And when they landed in Jamaica, the West Indian cricket team had just gone to South Africa. So there was a brother by the name of Billy Bannister from the Bahamas. Billy Bannister used to be the Temptations, and he also was the Eddie Kendricks' road manager. And Billy Bannister tells a story that he says, you know, the Jamaican journalists, he exaggerated a little bit. He said these Jamaican journalists were sitting there sticking their teeth with machetes and stuff. And that, you know, because everybody was mad at that particular time. And the Temptations were going to perform in Jamaica, and so they wanted to picket them. The journalists were calling for a boycott, but Eddie Kendricks had come. I guess Glenn Leonard, who used to live in Toronto, by the way, he had left the group for whatever reason, and so they brought Eddie back in basically just to do the Jamaican date. So they basically said the only reason why they let the concert go on was because Eddie Kendricks was in the group, and they loved Eddie Kendricks because they knew how Eddie Kendricks was, for lack of a better, not lack of, I won't say, not a better word, but Eddie was a race man. So they let the concert go on because Eddie was in the group.
Yeah. You know, when he died, he was living right here in the Atlanta area, in Marietta, Georgia, when he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And he kind of set the tone for falsetto singers. I mean, there are a lot of great ones, as you and I have discussed over the years. But you know, Eddie's approach to it. You know, when you mentioned David Ruffin kind of forgetting his lines because he's listening to Eddie, I can really appreciate that. The man's voice was just so distinctive.
He and Ron Banks sort of had pretty voices, had pretty falsettos. Yeah. Ron Banks was dramatics. Pardon me. Yeah.
That's another great singer. You know, talking about the bronze statue that they built in Birmingham. I kind of stumbled up on it the first time I saw it. I didn't know it was there. I knew Eddie was from Birmingham, but I was there on an assignment and in downtown Birmingham, and I was just kind of strolling through the neighborhood and came upon this statue of Eddie. Eddie and Paul at the time. I think now it's been redone so that the other members of the original Temptations are also like in the background of the monument. But you know, I just kind of turned down a block one day and came up upon the statue of Eddie, sort of like in mid song, that really I thought had captured his countenance just perfectly, and just the kind of cool way that he held the microphone. That was quite an unexpected thrill, and it was good to see that Birmingham was memorializing one of its really great products in Eddie Kendricks.
And could you talk about Eddie the dresser? Eddie was the one that put all the Temptations wardrobe together. I understand that I think there was a big deal about him. They wore purple. Nobody wanted to wear purple. Men are not supposed to wear pink, purple, blah 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 blah. But Eddie put those purple outfits on, and everybody basically almost went to war about not wearing it. And they say when they came out on stage, the audience actually went mad. They loved it.
Yeah. Eddie had that long sort of model-like frame. He was tall and thin, and so he could pull off almost any style of dress. You remember at one point when they did Puzzle People, and they had those outfits with the big sort of ruffled shirt.
Yeah, right.
So he just kind of had a flair for what looked good on stage, and his sense of costuming, really kind of enhanced the whole Temptation presentation in those early days, and really right up until he left the group.
Yeah, that Puzzle People album, that's kind of a psychedelic type of situation, right?
Right. I guess this was the point in which Norman Whitfield was taken over from Smokey Robinson, who had been the producer and the songwriter for most of those early Temptation hits.
Right.
And Norman Whitfield came on. Puzzle People was Puzzle People before Cloud 9. I think Cloud 9 was in 1969.
Cloud. Yeah, I was living in Detroit when Cloud 9 came out, right?
And they had that great song "Runaway Child," "Running Wild."
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So yeah, I think that costuming in Puzzle People, Eddie was kind of they were arranged on like a stoop, like a building stoop, right? And Eddie was sitting up on one of the higher pillars, and he's got on, like this psychedelic outfit, really, I guess. He had the vest and the shirt, and then he had like a hat, like
right, the big hat
cocked to the side of me. It was a cool image.
What do you call Eddie? Eddie, the pretty boy, right?
Yeah. He looked like he sang. I don't know if you played in your rundown of Eddie songs earlier, whether you played "You're My Everything."
No, I didn't. I should have played it, but I didn't. Right.
That's from that Temps with a Lot of Soul
right.
album, where that was the song you mentioned. My brother Ray and I, he's a Temptationologist, as you know, but so that was our favorite song for singing together. "You're My Everything," where he do the David lines and I do the Eddie lines.
Mm-hmm. You remember? I don't want to cut you, but you remember when Luther did it with I forgot the brothers Ray Goodman, and he sang with Ray Goodman and Brown. Kevin. The Luther recorded "You're My Everything" with Kevin you know, the brother that sang background with Luther, Kevin. I can't remember Kevin's name. Kevin Owens, right? Kevin Owens.
Okay.
Yeah, Luther
Yeah.
Vandross and they did it together on Kevin Owens' albums, right? Album.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there were, there were a lot of songs. One of the things that I came across on YouTube was the appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show with the Supremes, in which they sang each other's songs. It was basically a medley of each other's songs, and so you had Diana Ross and Eddie trading leads on some of those classic Temptation songs. That was also a great historical music moment.
Well, they talked about the fact that David and Diana Ross had the little battle, and of course, with all due respect to Diana Ross, she couldn't touch David, and she called Mr. Gordy and told Mr. Gordy that David was making her look bad, and they put the song up in 2 or 3 upper key or something, and Eddie came and not Eddie, but David came and outsang her in a different key. He still took her out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You couldn't get a key high enough that David couldn't hit the note.
The Eddie, I don't want to get into the celebrity gossip thing, but there were Eddie and I think Eddie and Diana Ross were an item at one point, and I'm just going by the books. I think Diane had actually slapped Eddie once, and Eddie basically let it go.
Yeah, that's a new one on me. But though I don't doubt the veracity at all. Eddie and my friend G.C. Cameron, who was with the Spinners during that period when the Spinners were with Motown, and G talks about Eddie. They really were good friends and sort of road buddies together. G.C. is still in touch with Eddie's daughter, and so they kept a friendship over the years, as as a lot of those early Motown artists did. But so just looking at some of my favorite songs, I'm sure you played "Just My Imagination." You had to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, from the Sky's the Limit album, which was Eddie's final recording with the Temps.
Correct.
And I think it was in 1971. But that
71 or 72, right?
Yeah, but that song, my daughters, who became Temptation Files because those were the songs that they heard when they were growing up, and they loved to sing "Just My Imagination" at family reunions and so forth. And when I think about that, it's just a testament to the endurance of Eddie's voice and the sound of the Temptations, how it spoke to generations who weren't even born when they were at their height, but learned to appreciate that sound and Eddie's sweet falsetto.
Yeah, the sweet that falsetto was. I remember Smokey, and Smokey is a giant. But I think that I'll try something new. I actually think that I think Eddie sings Smokey songs better than Smokey. I hope I don't get arrested for saying that, but
that's funny you should mention that because maybe one of the testaments to that is the album called The Temptations Sing Smokey, right?
Right, exactly.
And so there's a lot of good songs on there, but the song, to your point, the song that I think might exemplify what you're talking about is a song called "You Can Depend on Me."
Oh, yes, sir. You can.
That was Smokey's song, but the way the Temptations did it with Eddie's lead, it's just, I mean, it's so haunting. The way he handles those lyrics, it almost makes you forget Smokey did it first.
Yeah, Smokey was my one of my idols. So for me to say that about Smokey in terms of that, that's exactly how I felt. I say Smokey shouldn't have let Eddie touch his stuff.
That's so true because another Smokey classic that Eddie makes his own on that The Temptations Sing Smokey album is What Love Has Joined Together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It would be easier to take the wet from water or the dry from sun. Yeah. He killed that one too.
He killed that one too.
But Vern, we run out of time, sir. I hate to cut you off. Maybe we should do this again soon.
I invite all your listeners to check out the Temptations Sing Smokey album.
And okay, what's your latest thing that they can get to support you?
Well, my novel, The Jones Men, is available on Amazon.com. My classic crime novel, which is set in Detroit, which, as you know, is where the Temps and Motown were, and where I lived for a couple of years, and I was working for Newsweek and produced that book. So, The Jones Men on Amazon.com. I'd appreciate it. Norman, thanks again for having me, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll be in touch.
All right.
And we are getting ready for the Jazz Zone, and stay tuned for Dr. Gerald Horn coming up